Welcome to Leaders and Loggers, the podcast that quenches your thirst for leadership knowledge one pint at a time. Grab your favorite brew, sit back, and join us as we raise a glass to the world of leadership. I'm your host, Kevin Dawson, and each week we'll bring you refreshing conversations with leadership experts from around the globe. We'll dive into the minds of CEOs, thought leaders, and change makers, sipping on the secrets of their success. From the boardroom to the brewery, our guests share their unique perspectives on what it takes to lead in today's ever-changing world. Well, welcome to Leaders and Loggers, and today I am joined by Lucas Sherraden, who is a leadership trainer, keynote speaker, coach, consultant, and a Chiefs fan, as I've learned. Very important, as I have adopted the Chiefs over the last several years as my second team, because as being a lifelong Dallas Cowboys fan, they've not done nothing for me in the last 30 years, but go Patrick Mahomes. But Lucas, welcome to the Leaders and Loggers podcast.
Thanks so much for having me here, Kevin. I really appreciate it. And thank you for shouting out to the Chiefs. So,
you know, when the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes, they got all of West Texas to come follow after them. And because, our Cowboys sure have not done anything.
That's right. They look good every year going into the season, and yeah,
they build up my hopes so high, and then I just at this point, it's just like Patrick Mahomes is,
something else.
Something else.
Speaking of leadership, right?
Yeah, it shows how well the leadership and in the development of the culture that the Chiefs have built between Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the rest of the team. Now, I do want to get your opinion because it's been in the news so much.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, I see this question coming.
Yeah. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift.
What it's done for the Chiefs is now my 25-year-old daughter who hates football is all of a sudden a Kansas City Chiefs fan. And so what I think, honestly, that was brilliant marketing, whether the relationship works or not. Travis Kelce was doing great before as a football player. Now he is, I think I heard that he had 900 additional Instagram followers overnight, and his jersey is selling like crazy. And honestly, the NFL has to love it because they got another demographic to be a little interested in their franchise, which, let's just face it, as much as I love football and as much as I love the Chiefs, it is a business that they want eyeballs and ears, and they want people buying their stuff and going to their games. So good marketing.
It is. I laughed. I don't know if you saw Mark Cuban comments on all this. He goes, Taylor, dump Travis, come date one of my guys.
That's right. He wants to put the Mavericks on. Yeah. Well, and I guess I don't want to be insidious and that cynical, but that may be a strategy from some hurting sports brands. Get your star player to date some pop singer that's got a lot of following, and you leverage the power of their celebrity.
So. Sometimes a little bit of collaboration and branding goes a long way.
That's right.
Well, before we jump into our conversation today, I am drinking all the way from Ireland, Sullivan, from Kilkinney, Ireland, which was established in 1702. Sullivan's Brewing, their Irish golden ale, which one of the few beers that I get internationally that I've had on the podcast. So cheers.
There you go. Cheers. And if I'd have known, I would have joined you, but I got water. So it's a good year of water.
It's hydration one way or the other. Beer has water in it.
One makes you just a little bit happier than the other. So.
Absolutely. Well, Lucas, I would love for our audience to kind of hear your story. I got to hear a little bit when we met a few weeks ago in Fort Worth, and which is why I said I've got to have Lucas come on. And because I when we were all together in Fort Worth, and for people who've heard now, as I've interviewed several people from that time, like I only got to interview everybody for like 5 or 10 minutes. And That is not for me, as just that natural curiosity, I want to know more. And so having to cut me off at 5 or 10 minutes was like, torture.
Yeah, I get it.
I want to have a good conversation. So with that being said, love to hear your story.
Sure. So right out of college, I went into ministry for several years, was a couple decades in ministry, started a church. Last year in ministry, I flew 125,000 miles. I'm married now almost 35 years with 4 kids. So I literally was missing everything of my kids, all their violin recitals, soccer games, what have you. I was in India. I just got done preaching on a very large stage of about 100,000 people, went back to the hotel room, and I'm Skyping my kids at 1 o'clock in the morning. And during the month of January of '08, I have this epiphany as I hang up the Skype or I close my laptop that for me, this is all that parenting is going to look like in the month of January. Because I literally was going to go home, unpack a suitcase, pack a suitcase, and hit the road again. And as much as I loved speaking and love helping people and love presenting from the stage, I had this little voice go off in my head. And I'm not trying to impose my faith on anybody or my spirituality, but it was, for me, it was God saying, "Lucas, you've traveled the world and played with everybody else's kids. Now it's time for you to come home and play with your own." And that hit me between the eyes, Kevin. And I came home. I talked to my wife about it. My wife needs a lot of security, and she married a guy that's ready, aim, ready, fire, aim type of guy. I just jump. If there's a cliff, let's jump off of it. We'll figure out how to fly on the way down. And so I said, I know nothing since I was 16 other than preaching, but I have to go do something different. This is 2008 in Houston, Texas. So I resigned my church, canceled all my speaking engagements, and watched 3 episodes of House Hunters on HGTV and thought real estate would be a great career. And you could tell that I'm not when they tell you not to be the smartest guy in the room, Kevin, I enter a room and I accomplished the mission. So I graduated from high school with a 2.17 GPA. So while my daughter just graduated magna cum laude, I graduated praise de laude. I got out of the place, right? And so I got out of ministry, and it was awful. It was terrible. I went $100,000 in credit card debt within a year. I was going broke. Real estate was challenging in 2008. It was the man-made recession because of the banking decisions that they made, the subprime issues. And I, at that time, got recruited to another real estate office. It was a Keller Williams brand, and it changed my life forever. In the next 9 months, I sold 32 transactions, made $156,000 in nine months. The next year, I doubled that, and then I had an opportunity to run an office, and then I did that really well. Ended up number 8 in the nation, and was getting a lot of accolades. And then I got to own offices, and then worked for Gary Keller directly for a few years, and just recently decided to step out and reinvent myself and take all that I've learned over the last several years of leading real estate offices that are filled with 1099 independent contractors, take those leadership lessons and take it to other leaders who may be in W-2 situations, or they're in 1099s, or they may be in charitable situations. I, from time to time, still get invited to speak in church settings. But right now I'm on mission to help the world change the way we view leadership and do it authentically. Not, I think that there's some great teaching, but it feels very soundbite-ish on leadership. And then there's other stuff that is so out there. I can't be that. Like, that leader literally probably dives into the swimming pool with glasses on and comes out without a hair out of place and their glasses are on. It's like, I'm not 5% body fat, perfect marriage, perfect smile, perfect leader, and have a line for everything. I've never been that, nor ever will be, because I'm passionate about helping leaders be very authentic with who they are, and at the same time effective. Because I hear some people, Kevin, real honestly, say, well, you just take it or leave it and nobody's following you. Well, you suck as a leader, and take it or leave it, you're ineffective. So I want authentic and effective. And so I'm a student of leadership.
I love listening to your story, because I think for a lot of people go through a transition, whether it's a crisis that drives a change, or a career change, or whatever it may be. And for you to go, hey, I need to come home. I know for me, that kind of hits home a little bit. I gave up what thought my career was going to be in order to be a dad, which is the greatest leadership training ground. And so I had to shift and pivot. And it is, for a lot of people who go through that transition, a scary time, but I think it speaks to the resilience of human beings and to leaders that goes, hey, you can do this. And as your story was, I jumped into real estate because, you know, I'm guilty of watching House Hunters and or any of the home flipping shows like Chip and Joanna Gaines. Like, oh yeah, I could do that. No, I
Yeah,
can't.
it's so easy. You know what? Here's what's really scary about that decision, Kevin, is after I started running offices and then owning several offices, brokerages, I've had several agents in my offices actually be the agent on House Hunters. And here's the thing: is the whole show is shot like 3 to 6 months after the buyer's already bought and moved in, and they go literally take all their stuff out of the house so that they're. So it's like, wait a second. I based an entire career decision on a reality show that's not completely real. Sorry, HGTV. But it's like, how smart am I?
It's funny. So I've been on reality TV before in a docuseries for a few years ago, and reality TV is such a weird term to begin with because it's extremely scripted.
Right.
And I think to your point in talking about leadership in modern leaders, especially in a content creation driven world, there are a lot of leaders who put on the facade of these sound bites and these great content clips, and
Right.
but there's nothing authentic behind it. It's just really good packaging.
Yeah, and Kevin, here's the thing: it's like nobody's talking about. Well, 2 nights ago, I woke up in a panic attack at 2:30 in the morning, and I was freaking out about X, Y, and Z in my companies, and how do I handle that? I think that the fallacy of leadership is we're painting it. It's kind of like what women used to have to face with the beauty industry. They were looking at images in magazines that were airbrushed, touched up images, and that was beauty. And how do you keep up with that? It's not even real. I think we have a similar, not quite as devastatingly personal, but I think we have a similar issue. Is the books on leadership tell retrospectively all the things, but I'm I'm not listening to a leader saying, yeah, 2 nights ago, 2:30 in the morning, I was freaking out, or I own 4 real estate offices right now. The market just shifted by 40%. And I'm looking at the next 6 months of, okay, well, I may go back to the single days of eating ramen noodles and seeing if I can afford to put an egg in my ramen noodles. It's like it's like I want to know how leaders authentically are facing the challenges without an airbrushed message, without a made up story, without it that they have it all together. And the leader doesn't always have it together. I'm listening right now to Phil Knight's story, Shoe Dog, the story of Nike. Man, that guy was riddled with problems and lawsuits and FBI investigations and things not working out, and lack of capital. And I listened to Steve Jobs, and I know that and he is one of my heroes, and rightfully so. But if you look at it, I think he kind of blew up some relationships along the way, and he messed up some things because he had some idiosyncrasies that were just not really productive. And it's like I relate to Winston Churchill. Really, he only did one amazing thing and get us through World War II, but everything else he did was abysmal failure. So
Right.
and I don't know why, but it just comforts me to know that the great leaders I aspire to be, when I study between the lines and get past all the glamour and the glitz, oh my gosh, there are human beings that really at the moment of decision didn't know whether they're doing the right thing or not.
I love that. I speak so much about being authentic or being vulnerable in your message. And our mutual friend Amanda Ludwig, and I've told her this, and I've shared this a couple of times now. When we were doing all of those podcast reels, she comes in to tell her story and starts to be a little bit emotional with it, and buttons up real tight to not show emotion. And we get done, and I gave everybody feedback. I said, let the emotion be there.
Right.
It makes people feel what you're feeling because you're being vulnerable and raw. Like, you're going to create much more engagement with someone by being vulnerable than you are going to be with 20 great statistics or quotes.
That's exactly right. And so that's right now I just within the last couple of years stepped aside from my role at Keller Williams International, working as a regional director and leading a lot of the recruiting efforts for, I mean, honestly, we went through a 7-year period of time at Keller Williams where we grew faster than any other real estate company has ever done in history. We grew by 100,000 agents in 7 years, and I was a key leader in that. So I've seen leadership at an extremely high level. I've also seen leadership at an abusive level and not good level and a very difficult level. And I bet if we pulled your audience right now and said, tell me about a time you were poorly led, those stories would outweigh the times that you were wonderfully led. And so for me, that sense of pain, that sense of longing has put me on a quest, and I'm just a journeyman. I'm just somebody journeying along and don't have it all figured out. I'm still figuring things out, but I do know this, that there is a key that I learned early in the real estate world. That when I was like, my first office was, we used to joke around at Keller Williams when somebody says, "Hey, Lucas, I have an opportunity for you." What that really means is something's messed up. And if I have a really big opportunity for you, it's something's really badly messed up. And I had a really big opportunity. And my first month on the job running an office, I think we had $16,000 of revenue and $65,000 of expenses. I had agents that hated being a part of this new Keller Williams office. They were running up and down the hallways, cussing each other out. We had a construction project going on at the same time. So we had power saws and dust everywhere. Copy machines didn't work. Internet didn't work. Phone systems didn't work. I had a very loyal employee that I brought with me to that office that literally left a Post-it note on my desk says, "I can't take this office. I quit. The keys are in the desk." And he drove off, wouldn't return my calls. A very loyal, it was that bad. And I started working with a coach, Kevin, at that time, who began to ask me this question: what story are you telling yourself? I said, "I'm not telling myself any story. The guy literally was in the hallway. That's not my story. That's what actually happened." Said, no. And I just heard Colin O'Brady, who's the author of the 12-Hour Walk, just say this not long ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago at a conference that I was a keynote at and he was a keynote at. He said, "You are the stories you tell yourself." And I began to think through that, wow, my story is my emotions. My story is I'm mad. My story is I'm frustrated. My story is whatever I am is. And I began to start to tweak that if that is a story I'm telling myself, even though it's real, because emotions are all need to be validated. They're all real. So they all need to be validated. They aren't always all helpful. They're not always empowering. And so why would I ever embrace an emotion that's disempowering or a story that's disempowering? So I began to play with what are the stories I'm telling myself. And most of them are happening on a subconscious level, which is insidious because I could, it's not the bullet you see coming at you that kills you. It's the bullet that you don't see coming at you.
Right.
It's not, if I'm aware that I like the Chiefs, I could deal with that. Right. But it's the stuff that's underneath, like, why do I always get in a rush? Or why am I always in a hurry? Or why do I make up the story that I'm a failure if I miss a goal? Or why is that person frustrating? Why is that person annoying? Why is that person energizing? Why am I attracted to this? Or why am I detracted from that? Once I started understanding that I actually author all those stories, I can maybe insert a better story, because if I created the story in the first place, maybe I could create another story that helps me move forward. So, for example, in this office, I was charged with recruiting to this absolute mess. And I would pick up the phone and I'd call somebody like you and say, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about coming to Keller Williams." And you'd go off on me, tell me also. I'd hang up the phone like, "Gosh, this is useless. They hate me. They can't stand it." Well, what if that wasn't true? So here's the key question I learned. And a common friend of ours, the Bouchers, who wrote The Purpose Factor, are using this in their organization. Whenever that happens and I start finding myself in a story, just insert one question. Just if you could practice the pause and be aware, oh, I'm in my story, I'm in my belief, I'm in my head. Just stop yourself and ask this question: what else could it be? So maybe what you're feeling isn't rejection. Maybe what you're feeling is you're excited to be good at recruiting. Maybe in your organization, you're not really frustrated. You're just passionate about a preferred future and a vision of what you see it could be. Maybe that one employee that's just a constant thorn in your side, if you stop, say, well, maybe they're not a thorn. What else could it be? Well, maybe they just care. And we need to get on the same side. oh wow, they're not being annoying and a thorn in the side. They just care about outcomes and have a different perspective. I want to find whatever story I could be by asking and getting myself out of judgment and into curiosity. Curiosity is probably one of the most powerful ways to be authentic as a leader right now. Is what else could it be? And then once I start, because here's the thing: is once we're not crossways, but if you and I got crossways, and I'm like, man, Kevin's just a jerk. Once I make that judgment, that's the only reality possible in my mind. If I get into curiosity, there's 1,000 possibilities of what it could be. I'd rather be creative than judgmental.
I love all of that. You know, I love the story aspect. I think story has such a powerful place in our lives. And a good friend of mine, Tony Bridwell, who I go to often when I need help with crafting good story, and I recently called him the other day to help me storyboard a documentary project. And you know, he's always of the mindset of, when we tell good stories, when we understand the story, people are going to respond in one of three ways. They're either going to show up, speak up, or sync up. And we're trying to get them to that sync up moment where we are in alignment in that story. And I love what you shared here is, look, we've got to take this out and ask this question to see what is going on. And I think that's a great lesson for leaders, regardless of where they are at in their leadership journey, is to understand what's the story going on here.
Well, and I just, in one of my keynotes, a keynote I just gave a couple weeks ago in Phoenix, I put a picture up of a man, and it was like on a pristine beach, a man with probably about a 7 or 8-year-old kid. It was a shot from the back. They were walking hand in hand. There's palm trees, blue skies, perfect, very tranquil, azure blue ocean. And I said, hey, how many of you love this picture? Awesome, caption it. And people would shout out things like, oh, vacation, my big why, day, dad spends vacation time with son, quality time with son. Like, awesome. What's your emotional relationship to this photograph? And they were like, it's good. I said, it's good, not because of the photograph. It's good because of what you subtitle it. So let me change your emotional relationship in a nanosecond. I'm not going to change the content. I'm going to change the context because, and this is something I have people write down, great leaders help people put context around the content that shows up. So I'm not going to change this photograph. All I'm going to change is the subtitle. You tell me about your emotional relationship to it. Father spends final days with terminally ill son. The content doesn't change at all. All we change is the context. What life is, Kevin, is us learning how to put the context, the subtitle, or whatever happens that empowers us to move forward instead of emotionally causes us to withdraw or do some stuff that is self-sabotaging. And that's what my mission is. Yeah, that's the key to uncaging a leader. And I'm saying it publicly because I need the accountability. But my book, Uncaged Leadership, will be done by the end of the year, because it's interesting that this is a great book. This is a great idea. Now the stories I'm telling myself are what sabotaging. The very process of writing a book about self-sabotage and the stories we tell ourselves. However, this is what helps leaders get uncaged, because we're in a cage of our own making. We're trapped by stories that we've told. And by the way, some of it's been traumatic. Some of the stuff that's happened has been awful. And sometimes I actually need to call a professional for help. But sometimes though, I could just say, whoa, stop. What else could this be? Oh, wow. That helps me move forward. Like this morning, I was cut off in traffic by somebody that was obviously in a hurry to get wherever they go. And my natural story is like, what a jerk, what an idiot. And then this is what I say, well, what else could it be? Well, maybe he has to go to the bathroom. And he's in the car doing the potty dance, or man, maybe his wife is giving birth right now. And he's trying to get to the hospital. Gosh, I hope you get there okay, buddy. I don't know. It doesn't mean that. I remember when I used to make sales calls. I hope your audience likes this. Since you're drinking a beer, I'm going to guess that your audience will be okay with this. But I used to make cold calls sometimes when I started selling real estate, and somebody would yell at me, and I used to just, oh my gosh, I hate rejection. And it's like, oh my word.
Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah. It's like, and so I like, it put me off all morning if one person yelled at me, which is interesting because that person's not coming over for Thanksgiving or Christmas. And yet I'm giving my emotional wherewithal to this person that just yelled at me. this is what I would do is like, they would yell at me, and I'd hang up the phone and say, he probably didn't breastfeed long enough as a baby. And it would make me laugh. And all of a sudden I reset. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can just imagine he probably needs a therapist. This is awesome. And so I'd get back on the phone and I'd call the next person because the last guy didn't breastfeed long enough. And I don't want him as a client anyway. I don't know that that's true. It probably isn't, but who cares? It's not about him. It's about the stories I tell myself. It doesn't empower me as a leader to move forward, or is the story I'm saying to myself causing me to be stuck?
I love that story. It makes me think of, I've been listening to this podcast that has a lot of correlations between sales and dating.
Yeah.
And they talked about, if you, for those who are trying to go pick up somebody at a bar, like you walk up to somebody and they just look at you and go, ooh, no, and walk away. And
I got that a lot in high school, buddy. So it wasn't a bar. That was my high school years. I've got a great face for podcasts.
Yeah. And so the host is going, well, you have to realize that it's not about you. They have no idea who you are.
That's exactly
right. And I think to your point, like, hey, if you're calling somebody or in their immediate reaction is this negative reaction or something, you haven't said anything or done anything other than maybe said hi. And it definitely can be distracting and down, make us feel horrible. But like, it's the story that we tell ourselves, like, this is not about me. This has nothing to do with me. It's about them. What story can I say? Okay, you know what? They rejected me because I'm too good looking.
There you go. Well, here's the thing. I can't make up that story because that's just factually inaccurate. But one thing that I started doing in sales, and it helped me immensely, is every day I'd get up, because I had this moment where I was driving to the office and I'm like, I'm going to call a bunch of people whose listings had expired, and I'm going to call, see if I can help them. And they all going to yell at me. They're all going to not like me. They don't know me. And I'm a relationship guy, which is kind of a farce, because if you're a relationship person, you only make a cold call once. And then after that, you don't have a relationship, or you do have a relationship. So if you're really a relationship person, a cold call should be a welcome to you. But so anyway, I just said, God, out there somewhere in MLS land, there's a couple right now over breakfast praying that our listing just expired. And they're over breakfast and they're saying, you know what, honey, let's just pray about this. God, could you help us out today? We need to get our listing sold. And our previous agent couldn't get it sold. And they won't come get their sign out of our yard. They won't come get their stuff out of their flyers out of it. They won't come get the lockbox. Back to me in the car. God, I want to just call enough people to find the person who's praying that prayer and be an answer to the prayer. So the frame that I put around sales calls is, God, whose prayer can I answer today? It's interesting, because if you yelled at me, I'd hang up the phone. You didn't breastfeed long enough, and you probably didn't pray the prayer this morning because you probably never prayed a prayer because you're a pagan going to hell. It's like whatever it was. And I'd laugh and get back on it. And it was weird. As I started saying, God, I'm not looking for anybody. I'm just looking for somebody I could be an answer to their prayer. Well, I take great energy to be an answer to somebody's prayer. And then I would go, and it was uncanny, Kevin. When I started doing that, I started getting appointments, and I started going on listing appointments. And after I'd list their house, they would say something like, it's really weird. Can we just be honest with you? I said, what's that? I said, it was so weird. Just that morning, 2 hours before you called, me and the wife, the missus, we were praying that God would help us out today. And you called out of the blue. That was just crazy. I'm like, wow. It's amazing that we attract what we want in our minds, in our imaginations. And our imagination is super, super powerful.
There's a guy I met several years ago, Thomas Blackwell, who always talks about we bring about what we speak about.
Yeah. Thoughts become things.
Yes. And the mind is a very powerful thing. Whatever we tell ourselves, good or bad, is what we're going to believe. Yeah. And so hopefully we're feeding our mind with good things.
I remember as a youth pastor, went back in the ministry days, I tell, as a man thinketh in his heart, I know that James Allen wrote a good book on that. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So you are what you think about. I had some 16-year-old guy in the back of the room says, dang it, then I must be a girl, because that's all I think about. Like, brilliant. You guys are morons.
And teenagers are something else.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've been focusing so much on helping to develop authentic leaders, and you've kind of shifted a little bit in your career where you're kind of more of that coach mentality.
Yeah.
I would love for you to kind of just speak to the importance of leaders who want to coach, and then secondly, how to be coached.
Yeah, I love that. I think obviously it's a huge industry right now in the United States. I've been a professional coach for 5 years with one organization. Now I'm launching my own thing in just my own world. Here's the thing: in order to be a great coach, I need to first be a great coached person. I need, we don't get what we want; we get who we are. And so, if I'm going to coach, and by the way, coaching is not advice giving. I could get a mentor to give me advice. Great coaches ask great questions. Great coaches extract the genius inside of somebody. Great coaches could see the treasure when everybody else just sees the dirt. Great coaches could see past the person's stories and see past the person's facades and ask questions so that somebody self-discovers. And in fact, if a great coach does his or her job, the person that is being coached feels like they did it all on their own. And so a great coach, and I've had great coaches, I've had okay coaches, and I've had terrible coaches. The great coaches that I look back on, I walked away from those encounters with such self-awareness. I think authenticity. I read this book, True North, and they defined authenticity, and I've been thinking a lot about this. Is authenticity is self-awareness plus self-acceptance. So when I'm fully aware of who I am and how I show up, and I quit beating myself up for it, then I'm being authentic. Without being self-aware, I don't have a shot at being authentic. And I think great coaches just simply put a mirror up and say, take a look. This is what I see. I see the greatness in you. I see you see who you are, and they pull it out and they help people. I could get advice from anybody. Their advice is so freely given. I mean, good grief, open up your social media feed and you will see more advice. We have access to more advice, opinions. We can be mentored by the greats of all time because we have it, documented. But great coaches, and we started off talking about the Chiefs, like Andy Reid, great coach because he could take a person and help them maximize their potential. And he's known for taking people kind of off the trash heap, the people who have made mistakes, players who've got in trouble with the law, and he takes them and he helps get them on track, gets them consistent with their lives. You only need one car, you only need one house, you don't need to fight. He helps them get on track and extracts the best out of them. What would it look like, Kevin, if we lived in a world where we had more authentic leaders, where we had people who know anybody can make money? But what if we had leaders who could make a difference, right? What if we had leaders who were willing to stop and reflect and take a look at themselves and see where's my DNA in this mess of an organization? Where's my DNA in an underachieving company? Where's my DNA in the lack of sales and the lack of clients and the lack of whatever? Where's my DNA in the success of this? And be able to take a look inward and make adjustments and extract the greatness that I think that every person is born with. And what would it look like if we had people who were really at peace with themselves? I know, like for me, I know I talk really fast, I move really fast, and because I am grotesquely impatient. I beat on the microwave this morning to get it to cook faster. It's like it's like, would you, for the love? And my wife is always coming after me. She says, "You left 2 seconds on the microwave. Did that 2 seconds really make a difference?" I said, "Yes, I needed to go. I needed to go." It's just that's the way I'm wired. And once I realized that's who I was, and I stopped beating myself up for it, then I can be authentic with who that is. And I know sometimes I have to artificially suspend it, and sometimes I have to tone it down, and sometimes crank it into full gear. I have a vision. What would it look like if corporate America was filled with authentic leaders? What would it look like if small businesses were managed by authentic leaders? What would it look like if your boss was an authentic leader or if you were the authentic leader? So I have a vision to be able to coach and deliver information to help people with that, and some secrets that I've learned, because this is what I've learned, and it's self-serving. Whenever I give out, I'm usually finding out that I'm the recipient of. So I just can't outgive God. It's like I'm giving out and it comes back to me. And I think that becomes fulfilling. That becomes very purposeful. For me, a leader is a person who influences people to accomplish a purpose. So anybody who helps you accomplish your purpose in life is really is a leader. And I think that there's a variety of ways to do that. And that's my mission. That's my excitement.
I love it. So to the flip side of all of that, if someone who's going, hey, I mean, we've talked about coaching, but what if I want to be coached?
Yeah.
Because I think so many young leaders, and I look at my generation and younger, millennial, Gen Z, and even Gen Alpha that's coming up behind, who are looking for strong leadership because it we have not had really authentic leaders. We've had people parading as leaders because of media, and not that there's anything wrong with those people. It's just they've not been authentic, to your point.
That's right. That's right.
And so for those younger listeners who are like, hey, I want to grow, and I know that in order for me to grow, I need a coach. What's some good advice that you can give to somebody saying, hey, if you want to be coached, here's how you be a great coached leader?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, pick your coaches wisely. Just because they're the best social media marketer doesn't mean they're the best coach. There's two different skills. I think I'm an adequate coach. I'm terrible on social media. I'm growing in that. In fact, that I have a call right after this one with somebody who's going to help me with some of that because I'm not good with that. I understand from all my kids are 3 of my 4 kids are in their 20s, and then one of them's in their 30s. Apparently, my generation, the 50-year-old generation, ruined Facebook. I think Facebook's still cutting edge. And it's like, oh, we obviously ruined it, but it's like, so just be careful that you're not being marketed into a coach, that they have a track record, that they have a history, that they can point to the people that, like for me, I'm passionate about helping create millionaires. I could point to a couple of people I've helped become millionaires through real estate. I was a top recruiter in the company. Well, then when I became an owner, 2 times I was number 1 owner of the company with the top recruiter. So my employee that was listening to my training. So you want somebody with a track record, because track record gives validity. Don't fall for the salesmanship. Fall for the people who have a track record. Sometimes they're not cheap. Sometimes you get what you pay for. And so here's the thing is, I heard Darren Hardy say that he invests like 10% of all of his income in coaching and consulting. And now he has to be creative, and he's got so much money coming in that it's hard for him to give out 10% to his own self-development, which I would like to sign up for that problem. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
However, I think I would hire a coach that has a track record. I would hire a coach that is being coached. I would hire a coach that is humble, hungry, and smart, as Leoncino said. I would find those types of people. And then when you're coached, I think that it's fair to think through what they're saying. But if you're going to just simply sit on an hour-long or a half-hour weekly call with a coach and not do anything with that, it's going to be useless. So you have to implement what you're learning. You have to, and trust me, my coaches right now, every time they talk to me, I've made peace with being uncomfortable, because discomfort is usually the front door to progress. And so if your coach makes you comfortable, you may not have the right coach. But by the way, don't hire a buddy. Accountability partners, I really wonder about, because it's like, my buddies are there to drink a beer with after work and go out and hey, you'll get them next time, Tiger. Good coach says, okay, you said 10, you did 8. We're out of integrity with what you said you were going to do. What's the plan moving forward? And they don't let me off the hook until I come up with a plan, and then I execute the plan.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So I think I'm really picky about who I get in business with, Kevin, and I'm really picky with who I coach. In fact, I remember when I started at Keller Williams, there was a guy that wanted to mentor me, and he had been around the real estate industry forever. But every time I leave his office, I just feel like I'm a loser. I'm awful. I'm terrible. It's like he just beat the snot out of me. And what's interesting is the lady that was running our office at the time decided to put pictures on where you placed in the office according to your gross commission income. And I walked by and I was surprised, like, I'm number 11 in this office and I'm a new agent. But here's what was interesting. My mentor wasn't even on the list. Never take advice from somebody who hasn't done what you intend to do or has a pedigree of getting people to where you want to go. Andrew Reid may not have been the star quarterback at a Super Bowl, but he has got a proven track record that he can develop quarterbacks. And so that if you're going to hire, number one, I would never take free coaching. I want to pay for it because I want to be invested in it. And I would be very selective about the coaches. I'd interview them because you're the client. And then once you engage a coach, implement what they say.
I love all of that. I think it's so important. I remember when I hired my first coach, which was Brian and Gab, and one of the things that, you know, in our conversations was they knew me almost better than I knew me.
Right.
In asking those, you know, they took the time to really understand who I was, what I wanted, and what I was going to be about, and then spoke to that, not as them, but going, hey, this is about you. Here's what we know about you. Here's how we align with you, and here's how we're going to push you to that.
There you go.
And it's such an important thing. And to your point, like, don't hire a buddy. I always tell people, like, you need 3 people on your personal board of directors. You need a mentor or a coach, somebody who's above you, who's helping to lead and guide you. Then you need a peer that you can share with, or, you know, hey,
that's really smart.
Let me go grab that beer. Let's talk about what we're dealing with. And then you need somebody that you are coaching and mentoring behind you that you're bringing up with you.
Yeah, because I think coaching and wisdom is just like electricity. It's energy. It has to come in and go out. You know, if you have a battery that is constantly taking in but not putting out, it's going to end up ruining the battery. And so one of the natural phenomena is, because I used to be a preacher, so I'm going to use a little of my pastoral education because it makes me feel like that was worth all the thousands of dollars that I spent that I don't use. But one of the natural phenomena is the Dead Sea over in Israel, and the Dead Sea is dead because nothing lives in it, and nothing lives in it because the Dead Sea is fed by the Jordan River at north, but gives out nothing. So it takes in water and it doesn't give out any water. Therefore, it's dead. So as a good coach, I need to be coached and coaching. And no matter where you're in the journey, there's somebody, all a leader has to be is 1 step ahead of the people that they're coaching. And so you don't have to be 2 steps, just 1 step. So receive help, give help.
Love it. Well, Lucas, it is time for last call. And so for our listeners this week, what is something that they can be doing to be a better leader?
Yeah, here's what I would say is most leaders are in the trap, the tyranny of the urgent. What is happening right now is screaming so loud, the urgent screams louder than the important. So this is the key that I'd give everybody is learn how to practice the pause. And so when something happens, Mel Robbins is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is brilliant psychologically, because when you count, you get out of emotional side of your brain, you get into the logic side of your brain. So that's brilliant. It's also a pause. It's also, now I take a step forward. And so I would recommend everybody taking a pause, taking a breath, and asking one question. Whatever just happened, okay, what else could this be? Maybe they just got bad news. What else could it be? Maybe I didn't sleep enough last night. Well, also, what else could it be? Maybe I'm not intimidated. Maybe I'm eager and excited to be on the other end of this. And kick in your creative juices. And at first, it's going to feel very airy-fairy and ethereal. But I think that what would be massively helpful is if we had more thoughtful leaders instead of reactionary leaders. So practice the pause and ask a simple question. What else could this be?
Love it. Well, Lucas, how can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your upcoming book? I know you've got this great group on Facebook.
You've got a couple.
And so where can they find you?
Yeah, so we have right now we have you like are the aspiration for us as podcasters. We have a hobby podcast called the Leaderverse, and there's a Facebook group. They can go join us at the Leaderverse. Find us on Facebook. I guess if you're over 50, then Facebook is still cutting edge. But if you're under 50, it's old school. They can find me on LinkedIn as well. And my last name, I hopefully is spelled correctly in this podcast. It's a joy it's not as cool as Dawson. So,
well, not everybody can join me at the creek.
there you go. There you go.
Well, Lucas, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and just giving us so much wisdom and insights on authentic leadership and coaching. I really appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for listening to the Leaders and Loggers podcast. Hey, if you really enjoyed what you heard today, please share this with a leader that you know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we are on all the major streaming platforms, or you can watch our conversations on YouTube. And we hope you join us next week for another Pint in Conversation.